Sir, I don't want candy. Can I buy a family instead? The little black girl asked at the corner store. The fluorescent lights of Felix's corner store hummed their familiar tune as the old man dragged a damp cloth across the scratched counter for the third time that evening. Outside, the November wind rattled the security bars on the windows, and the neon, open sign flickered like a dying firefly. Felix Martinez had been running this little store for 23 years, and he could count on one hand the number of customers who wandered in after 8 o'clock on a Tuesday. That's why the soft chime of the doorbell made him look up with surprise. A small figure shuffled through the entrance, and Felix's weathered face creased into a frown. The child couldn't have been more than 7 years old, swimming in an oversized navy coat that hung past her knees. Her left shoe was a scuffed sneaker, the right one a black Mary Jane with a broken buckle. But it was her eyes that made Felix set down his cleaning cloth. They held a seriousness that didn't belong on such a young face. "We're about to close, little one," Felix said gently, his accent carrying the warmth of his Puerto Rican childhood. "Where's your mama?" The girl didn't answer immediately. Instead, she clutched a crumpled brown paper bag against her chest like it contained the world's most precious treasure. Her hair was braided in uneven sections, some pieces escaping to frame her round face, and Felix noticed a small band-aid on her chin shaped like a butterfly. "Sir," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I don't want candy." Felix tilted his head. In all his years running the store, no child had ever walked in and announced they didn't want candy. It was like a fish saying it didn't want water. "Okay, sweetheart. What do you want then? Some chips? A juice box?" The girl shook her head and took a step closer to the counter. She had to stand on her tiptoes to see over it properly. "Can I buy a mommy instead?" The words hit Felix like a physical blow. He blinked, certain he misheard. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" "A mommy," she repeated more firmly this time. "I have money." She held up the paper bag and gave it a little shake. Felix could hear the rattle of coins mixed with something that sounded like crackling wrappers. Felix came around the counter and crouched down to her eye level. Up close, he could see the faint circles under her eyes, the way her lips were slightly chapped, and how her small hands trembled as she gripped the bag. "What's your name, honey?" "Amira," she said. "Amira James. And I need to find Miss Angie." "Miss Angie? She was my." Amira's voice faltered, and she looked down at her mismatched shoes. "She used to brush my hair real soft and tell me about princesses who lived in castles made of clouds. But then she went away, and now there's just Miss Carol who smells like old French fries and only yells." Felix's heart clenched. He'd seen enough in his neighborhood to recognize the signs: the too thin frame, the adult wariness in a child's eyes, the way she held herself like she was ready to run at any moment. "Where do you live, Amira?" She pointed vaguely toward the east side of town. "Greenridge House. It's where kids do dishes forever and nobody hugs." The name sent a chill down Felix's spine. He'd heard whispers about Greenridge, a group home with a reputation that made even the social workers in the area shake their heads. "How did you get here?" he asked softly. "I walked. When Miss Carol was watching her stories on TV. She gets real mad when people interrupt her stories." Amira opened the paper bag and peered inside. "I've been saving for a long time. Look." She tilted the bag toward Felix, and he saw an assortment that would have been comical if it weren't so heartbreaking. Pennies, nickels, and dimes were mixed with gum wrappers, smooth, flat, bottle caps, a half-melted crayon, and a red lollipop that had seen better days. "I've been collecting for 67 days, Amira said proudly. "Every time I found a penny or someone threw away a wrapper, I put it in my special bag. The lollipop is for emergencies, but I think this is an emergency." Felix felt his throat tighten. "Amira, sweetie, people aren't things you can buy at a store. But I heard Miss Carol talking on the phone. She said the state pays her for keeping us, so that means we cost money, right? So if I have money, I can pay Miss Angie to keep me instead." The logic was so innocent, and yet so devastating that Felix had to look away for a moment. When he turned back, Amira was watching him with those two serious eyes. Please, mister. I know Miss Angie wants to come back. She told me she did. She said she was trying to help us, but then the mean man in the suit came and made her leave. She cried when she hugged me goodbye. Felix glanced at the clock. It was nearly 8:30, and the responsible thing would be to call the police or child services. But something in Amira's face, the desperate hope mixed with quiet determination, made him hesitate. What if I help you find Miss Angie? He heard himself say. But first, I need to make a phone call. Can you wait here while I do that? Amira nodded solemnly. I'm good at waiting. I wait for breakfast, I wait for bedtime, I wait for Miss Angie to come back. Felix walked to the back office, his mind racing. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number he knew by heart. Raina? It's Uncle Felix. I need you to come to the store. Now. And bring your work bag. Uncle, it's almost 9 o'clock. Can it wait until? There's a little girl here who just asked me if she could buy a mommy with a bag full of pennies and gum wrappers. The line went silent for a long moment. Raina Martinez Santos had been a child services caseworker for 8 years, and she'd heard it all. But Felix could hear the sharp intake of breath. I'll be there in 10 minutes. When Felix returned to the front, Amira had climbed onto one of the plastic chairs he kept by the window. She was humming softly to herself, swinging her legs, and arranging the contents of her paper bag on the small table. What's that song? Felix asked, settling into the chair across from her. Miss Angie taught it to me. She said it was about a little bird who lost her nest but found a new tree where she could build a better one. Amira looked up at him with those serious eyes. Do you think Miss Angie found her new tree? Felix reached across the small table and gently covered her small hand with his weathered one. I think we're going to find out, little bird. I think we're going to find out. Outside, the wind continued to rattle the windows, but inside the warm glow of the corner store, an old man and a young girl sat surrounded by pennies and hope, waiting for help to arrive. Neither of them knew that this moment, this simple act of listening to a child's impossible request, would change all their lives forever. Amira carefully placed the sticky lollipop back in her bag and smiled at Felix. Thank you for not laughing at me, mister. Most grown-ups laugh when kids say things. Call me Mr. Felix, he said, squeezing her hand gently. And I promise you, little bird, I will never laugh at something that important. The door chimes sounded again, and both of them looked up to see a woman in her 30s with kind eyes and a worried expression hurrying through the door. She carried a leather bag that bulged with files and forms, the tools of someone who spent her days trying to fix broken systems one child at a time. Uncle Felix? Raina called, then stopped short when she saw Amira. Her train I took in everything, the mismatched shoes, the oversized coat, the paper bag, and most importantly, the guarded hope in the child's eyes. Raina, I'd like you to meet Amira, Felix said. Amira, this is my niece. She helps children. Amira studied Raina carefully. Are you going to send me back? I'm going to listen to your story first, Raina said, pulling up a third chair. Is that okay? For the first time since she'd walked into the store, Amira smiled, a real smile that transformed her entire face. I have a really good story, she said. It's about a girl who saved up to buy love, and it starts with Miss Angie and ends with finding home. As Raina opened her bag and Felix locked the front door, none of them realized that the real story was just beginning. Felix flipped the open, sign to closed, and pulled down the metal security gate halfway, leaving just enough space for streetlight to filter in. The three of them moved to his small back office, a cramped space that smelled of coffee and old newspapers, where Felix kept his desk, a mini-fridge, and a cot for the occasional overnight inventory. Amira perched on the edge of the cot, still clutching her paper bag, while Raina pulled out a yellow legal pad and clicked her pen. She'd learned long ago that notebooks were less intimidating to children than official forms. So, Amira, Raina began gently. Can you tell me about where you live? Greenridge House, Amira said, swinging her legs. It's the big gray building with the broken playground. There's 23 kids there, but only 4 bathrooms, so we have to wait in lines for everything. Felix watched as Raina's pen froze mid-sentence. Her face had gone pale. You know that place? He asked. I investigated Greenridge 2 years ago, Raina whispered. Multiple complaints about conditions. But the director, Mrs. Harrison, she's connected. Has lawyers. My supervisor told me to back off. Amira looked between them, sensing the shift in the adult's energy. Are you scared of Mrs. Harrison too? She has really sharp fingernails and she clicks them on her desk when she's mad. No, sweetheart, I'm not scared of her, Raina said, though her voice betrayed her. Tell me about Miss Angie. Amira's entire demeanor changed. She sat up straighter, and for the first time, her smile was genuine and bright. Miss Angie was the best. She worked the night shift, and when everyone was supposed to be sleeping, she'd sneak into our rooms and tell us stories about brave princesses and magical animals. She opened her paper bag and pulled out a flattened gum wrapper. See this? Miss Angie showed me how to make it shiny again by rubbing it on my sleeve. She said even broken things could be beautiful if you knew how to fix them. What else did Miss Angie do? Felix asked, settling into his desk chair. She washed my hair real soft, not like Miss Carol who scrubs so hard it hurts. And she would sneak us extra snacks from the kitchen. Amira's voice dropped to a whisper. But we had to be super quiet because Miss Carol said Miss Angie wasn't allowed to give us treats. Raina made a note. How long was Miss Angie there? Forever and ever. Well, maybe 6 months. But then one day, she was crying in the hallway, and this man in a black suit was talking to her real mean. He had papers in his hands and he kept pointing at them. What did the man say? Amira frowned, concentrating. He said Miss Angie was a troublemaker, and she was violating protocol. I asked Tommy what protocol meant, and he said it means rules that grown-ups make up when they don't want to be nice. Felix felt his jaw clench. What happened next? Miss Angie came to say goodbye. She hugged me so tight and she was crying. She whispered that she was trying to help us, but some people didn't want her to. She said she was going to keep trying, even if she couldn't stay. Amira's voice cracked. She promised she'd come back for me when she could. When was this? Raina asked. 67 days ago. That's when I started my paper bag plan. Amira held up the bag proudly. Every morning, I would look for pennies during chore time. Miss Carol makes us clean the floors and windows and do the dishes. She says it's character building, but my hands get all red and cracked. Raina's pen was moving rapidly now. What kind of chores do you do? Everything. We wake up at 5:30 and clean the bathrooms. Then we make breakfast for everybody. Then we clean the kitchen. Then we do laundry. Then we clean the bedrooms. Then we make lunch. Amira counted on her fingers. Sometimes we don't finish until dinner time, and then we have to clean up from dinner too. What about school? Felix asked. Mrs. Harrison says we get life education at Greenridge. That's better than regular school because we learn practical skills. Amira made air quotes with her small fingers, clearly repeating words she'd heard but didn't understand. Raina's face was stone cold. Amira, sweetie, do you know Miss Angie's real name? Angela. Angela Monroe. She showed me her name tag once. It was pretty. It had little flowers on it. Amira pulled out a bottle cap from her bag. She gave me this from her lunch. Said it was from her favorite soda, and now it could be my good luck charm. Felix leaned forward. How did you get out tonight? Miss Carol fell asleep watching her stories. She does that every Tuesday. I waited until she was snoring real loud, then I took my paper bag and walked out the back door. I remembered how to get here because Miss Angie pointed out your store once when we walked to the clinic. Miss Angie brought you here before? Raina asked. Not inside. But she walked me to the doctor when I had a bad cough, and she showed me your store. She said it looked like a safe place, with warm lights and a nice man who probably told good jokes. Amira looked at Felix. Do you tell good jokes? Despite everything, Felix smiled. I know a few. Suddenly, Raina's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen and her face went white. It's my supervisor. Someone reported a missing child from Greenridge. The warmth in the room evaporated instantly. Amira's eyes went wide with terror. Are you going to send me back? Please don't send me back. Miss Carroll will put me in the quiet room, and it's so dark and cold. The quiet room? Felix asked. It's where they put us when we're bad. It's just a closet with no windows. Sometimes kids stay there all night. Tears started rolling down Amira's cheeks. Please, I just want to find Miss Angie. I have enough money now. Look. She dumped her paper bag on the cot, revealing her collection of pennies, nickels, dimes, bottle caps, gum wrappers, and the precious lollipop. I counted. I have $2.37, plus all the special things Miss Angie touched. Raina looked at Felix, a silent conversation passing between them. The phone buzzed again. Uncle, Raina said quietly, if I take her back tonight and she tells them she was here, they'll move her to another facility. I'll never see her again. Felix stood up, his decision made. Then we don't take her back tonight. But my supervisor will understand when you explain that this child has information about systematic abuse at a state facility. Felix's voice was firm. Amira, sweetheart, would you like to stay here tonight? I have a couch upstairs, and we can look for Miss Angie tomorrow. Amira nodded eagerly, wiping her tears. Can I keep my paper bag? Of course. And tomorrow, we're going to find Angela Monroe and hear her side of the story. As Raina reluctantly answered her phone, Felix helped Amira gather her treasures. Neither of them noticed the black sedan that had been circling the block, or the way it slowed down as it passed the corner store. The hunt for Miss Angie was about to become much more dangerous than any of them realized. The next morning, Felix woke to find Amira sitting cross-legged on his living room floor, surrounded by napkins covered in crayon drawings. She'd been awake for hours, methodically sketching what looked like floor plans with the precision of an architect. Good morning, little bird, Felix said, settling down beside her with 2 cups of hot chocolate. What are you working on? Maps, Amira said matter-of-factly, accepting the warm mug. Miss Angie always said if you get lost, you need a map to find your way home. So I'm making maps of Greenridge so you can understand. Felix studied the drawings. Despite being made with broken crayons on paper napkins, they were remarkably detailed. Each room was labeled in Amira's careful handwriting. Kitchen where we wash dishes, bathroom with broken lock, Mrs. Harrison's office and no kids allowed. This one's my favorite, Amira said, pointing to a small square. Miss Angie's hiding place. She had a loose floorboard under her desk where she kept extra crackers and Band-Aids. She said it was our secret emergency stash. The door chimed as Raina entered, carrying a cardboard tray with coffee and a bag of pastries. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and Felix could tell she'd been up all night. Any word from your supervisor? Felix asked. Mrs. Harrison called him personally. Said Amira was disturbed and prone to fantasy. She's demanding her immediate return. Raina set down the coffee with shaking hands. But I made some calls of my own. She pulled out a thick folder and sat on the floor with them. I contacted 3 former employees of Greenridge. All of them quit within the past year. All of them mentioned Angela Monroe. What did they say? Felix asked. That she was the only one who actually cared about the kids. Sarah Chin, who worked the day shift, said Angela was constantly filing incident reports about inadequate food, excessive work hours, and unsafe conditions. But the reports never made it past Mrs. Harrison's desk. Amira looked up from her drawing. Sarah was nice too. She gave me a banana once when I was really hungry. You were hungry? Felix asked gently. All the time. We got oatmeal for breakfast, soup for lunch, and sandwiches for dinner. But only if we finished all our chores. If we didn't, we had to wait until the next meal. Amira drew a circle on her napkin. This is the kitchen. We had to stand on stools to reach the big sinks. My arms got so tired from scrubbing pots. Raina's jaw tightened. That's not character building, that's child labor. But Mrs. Harrison said we were lucky. She said most kids in foster care don't get to learn valuable life skills. Amira added more details to her drawing. She said we should be grateful that someone wanted to teach us to be useful. Felix felt sick. What about school? Education? Mrs. Harrison said cleaning was better than books. She said books just filled kids' heads with unrealistic expectations. Amira pulled out a different napkin. This is the quiet room. It's where they put Marcus when he asked if he could call his sister. The drawing showed a small, windowless space barely bigger than a closet. Amira had colored it completely black except for a tiny rectangle representing the door. How long was Marcus in there? Raina asked, her voice barely controlled. 3 days. He came out really quiet and wouldn't talk to anyone for a week. Amira's crayon pressed harder against the napkin. That's when Miss Angie started asking questions. She said 3 days was too long for anyone to be alone, especially a little kid. What happened when she asked questions? Mrs. Harrison got really mad. She called Miss Angie into her office and yelled so loud we could hear it through the walls. She said Miss Angie was undermining authority and filling children's heads with nonsense. Raina flipped through her folder. I found something else. Angela Monroe filed a formal complaint with the State Child Welfare Department 6 weeks before she was fired. She documented everything: the excessive chores, inadequate food, isolation punishments, even children being denied medical care. What happened to the complaint? It was buried. Someone with connections made sure it never saw the light of day. Raina's voice was bitter. But I found a copy. Angela was smart. She kept detailed records, photos, even recordings. Amira looked up sharply. Recordings? She had a small device hidden in her pocket. She recorded Mrs. Harrison threatening children, recorded the sounds from the quiet room, even recorded other staff members talking about how wrong everything was. Where is she now? Felix asked. That's the problem. After she was fired, she disappeared. No forwarding address, no phone number, no family contacts. It's like she went completely off the grid. Amira stood up suddenly and walked to the window. She's scared, she said quietly. Miss Angie told me that sometimes when grown-ups try to help kids, other grown-ups get really mad and try to hurt them. She said that's why she had to be careful. But we're going to find her, Felix said firmly. Right, Raina? Raina nodded, though uncertainty flickered in her eyes. I have one lead. A nursing home in Millbrook, about 2 hours from here. Someone matching Angela's description started working there about 2 months ago. Night shift, pays cash, keeps to herself. That sounds like Miss Angie, Amira said, pressing her face against the window. She always said nighttime was when the real work happened, because that's when kids needed someone the most. Felix joined her at the window. What are you looking at, little bird? That black car. It's been driving around the block all morning. Amira's voice was small. Mrs. Harrison has a car like that. She uses it to take kids to the special doctor when they won't stop crying. Raina rushed to the window and peered through the blinds. The sedan was parked across the street, engine running, windows tinted dark. We need to move, she said urgently. If that's who I think it is, we're running out of time. Are we going to find Miss Angie today? Amira asked, gathering her napkin drawings. Felix knelt down to her level. We're going to try, sweetheart. But first, we need to make sure you're safe. I'm safe with you, Amira said simply. You listen to me like Miss Angie did. You don't think I'm making things up. As they gathered their things, preparing for the journey to Millbrook, none of them noticed the figure in the black sedan lift a phone to their ear. The hunt for Angela Monroe was about to become a race against time, and the stakes had just gotten deadly serious. The real question wasn't whether they'd find Miss Angie. It was whether they'd find her before someone else did. 20 minutes later, Felix's old pickup truck pulled out of the alley behind his store while the black sedan remained parked out front. Raina had suggested the back exit, and now Amira sat between them, wearing Felix's oversized baseball cap and a pair of sunglasses that kept sliding down her nose. "I look like a movie star," Amira giggled, adjusting the sunglasses for the 10th time. "Miss Angie always said I could be anything I wanted when I grew up. Even a movie star." "What did you want to be?" Felix asked, navigating the highway toward Millbrook. "A hugger," Amira said without hesitation. "Someone whose job is just to hug kids who need it. Miss Angie said that was the most important job in the world." The drive to Millbrook took them through farmland and small towns, past billboards advertising everything from insurance to Jesus. Amira pressed her face to the window, marveling at the space between buildings, the way the sky seemed bigger here. "I never been this far from Greenridge," she said softly. "Miss Angie told me there was a whole world outside, but I thought she was just telling stories." Raina checked her phone for the 3rd time. "Still no response to my calls. Pine Valley Nursing Home doesn't exactly have a helpful staff." "Maybe they're protecting her," Felix suggested. "If she's been hiding for 2 months, she's probably scared of anyone asking questions." When they finally reached Pine Valley, it looked nothing like the sterile institutions Felix had imagined. The building was warm brick with flower boxes under the windows, and there was a garden where elderly residents sat in wheelchairs, soaking up the afternoon sun. "She's here," Amira said with absolute certainty. "I can feel it. Miss Angie always said we were connected by invisible threads, and mine is humming right now." They parked and walked toward the main entrance, but Raina stopped suddenly. "Wait. If we just walk in asking about Angela, and she's hiding for a reason, we might scare her off." "So what do we do?" Felix asked. Amira tugged on his sleeve. "The kitchen. Miss Angie always worked in kitchens. She said that's where the real heart of any place is." She pointed to a side entrance where they could see through windows into what looked like a large kitchen. "Smart girl," Raina murmured. "Let's circle around." They walked casually around the building, past the garden where an elderly man waved at Amira. She waved back enthusiastically, making him smile. At the kitchen windows, they could see several workers in hairnets and aprons preparing what looked like dinner. And there, at the far sink with her back to them, was a woman with familiar shoulders and the same gentle way of moving that Amira remembered. "Miss Angie," Amira breathed, pressing her face against the glass. The woman turned slightly, and even from this distance, Felix could see the recognition hit Amira like lightning. She started crying and pressed both hands against the window. "Miss Angie! Miss Angie!" The woman at the sink froze. Slowly, she turned around, and Felix saw a face that was tired and worn but still kind. When Angela Monroe saw Amira through the window, she dropped the plate she was washing. It shattered on the floor, but Angela didn't seem to notice. She walked toward the window like she was in a dream, her own tears starting to fall. "Amira?" she mouthed through the glass. "I brought my paper bag," Amira shouted, holding up the crumpled brown bag. "I saved enough money to buy you back." Angela's face crumpled. She looked around the kitchen, then pointed toward the side door. Within seconds she was outside, and Amira launched herself into her arms. "I knew you'd come back." Amira sobbed into Angela's shoulder. "I knew my paper bag plan would work." "Oh, baby girl," Angela whispered, holding her tight. "My sweet, brave baby girl. How did you find me?" "I walked to Mr. Felix's store and asked if I could buy a mommy, and he helped me, and Miss Raina helped me, and I made maps, and I saved money, and I never stopped believing you'd come back." Angela looked up at Felix and Raina over Amira's head. "You're the ones who helped her?" "She helped herself," Felix said. "We just listened. I've been so scared," Angela admitted, still holding Amira. "After they fired me, Mrs. Harrison's lawyers threatened me. Said if I ever tried to contact any of the children or share what I knew, they'd have me arrested for harassment and trespassing." "But you kept the evidence," Raina said. "The recordings, the photos." Angela nodded. "In a storage unit. I couldn't let it go, even though I was terrified. Those children deserve better. Can you come back now?" Amira asked, pulling back to look at Angela's face. I have enough money. Look. She opened her paper bag and showed Angela the contents. Angela's eyes filled with fresh tears. Sweetheart, it's not about money. It's about justice, Raina interrupted. And I think I know how to get it. A kitchen supervisor appeared at the door. Angela? Is everything okay? You've been gone for... She stopped when she saw the little girl in Angela's arms. Everything's fine, Mrs. Patterson, Angela said quickly. This is my daughter. She came to visit. The supervisor smiled. She's beautiful. Take all the time you need. As the woman went back inside, Angela looked at Raina. What do you mean, Justice? I mean it's time to stop running and start fighting. You have evidence, I have contacts, and we have a witness who's brave enough to tell the truth. Raina gestured to Amira. Are you ready to go home and face this together? Angela looked down at Amira, who was smiling up at her with complete trust and love. Will you stay with me? Even if it gets scary? I'll always stay with you, Amira said firmly. That's what families do. For the first time in months, Angela Monroe smiled a real smile. Then let's go home and fix this. As they walked back toward the truck, Amira skipping between Angela and Felix, none of them noticed the black sedan that had been waiting in the nursing home parking lot. The driver made a phone call, spoke briefly, then followed them back toward the highway. The final confrontation was about to begin, and this time, there would be no more hiding. The courthouse smelled like old wood and fresh fear. Amira sat between Angela and Felix in the front row, her paper bag clutched tightly in her lap, while reporters filled the back benches. Word had leaked about the little girl who tried to buy a family, and the story had captured the city's attention. Judge Patricia Williams entered, her black robes flowing as she took her seat. She was known for her no-nonsense approach to child welfare cases, and today her expression was particularly stern. This is an emergency hearing regarding the placement of Amira James, currently a ward of the state residing at Greenridge House, she announced. I understand there are serious allegations being made. Mrs. Harrison sat at the defendant's table with two expensive lawyers, her silver hair perfectly styled, her smile cold and practiced. She'd arrived in the same black sedan that had been following them, accompanied by a security guard who kept glancing nervously at the reporters. Raina stood to present her case. Your Honor, over the past 72 hours, we've uncovered systematic abuse at Greenridge House, including forced child labor, inadequate nutrition, and isolation punishment that violates every child welfare protocol. These are fabricated accusations from a disturbed child and a disgruntled former employee. Mrs. Harrison's lead lawyer interrupted. My client has run a model facility for 15 years. Judge Williams held up her hand for silence. I'll hear the evidence before I hear the arguments. Ms. Martinez Santos, please proceed. Raina approached the bench with a box of documents. Your Honor, I present Angela Monroe's original complaint filed with the State Department, along with photographs, audio recordings, and detailed incident reports spanning 6 months. She played the first recording. Mrs. Harrison's voice filled the courtroom, cold and threatening. These children are here because nobody else wants them. If they can't learn to be useful, they have no value to society. Discipline is the only thing that will save them from becoming criminals. A murmur ran through the gallery. Amira pressed closer to Angela, who wrapped a protective arm around her. I also present testimony from 3 former employees, Raina continued, all of whom corroborate the systematic abuse and confirm that Ms. Monroe was fired for attempting to protect the children. Mrs. Harrison's lawyer stood. Your Honor, these recordings were obtained illegally, without consent. They were obtained by a mandatory reporter witnessing child abuse. Raina shot back. Which makes them not only legal but required by law. Judge Williams nodded. Continue, Ms. Martinez Santos. Most importantly, Your Honor, I ask you to hear directly from Amira James herself. The courtroom fell silent as Amira stood up. Angela squeezed her hand encouragingly. Come forward, dear, Judge Williams said gently, her voice softening for the first time. Amira walked to the witness stand, her paper bag in her hands. The bailiff helped her adjust the microphone. "Can you tell me your name?" Judge Williams asked. "Amira James. I'm 7 years old, and I live at Greenridge House where kids do dishes forever and nobody hugs. Tell me about your paper bag, Amira." Amira opened the bag and carefully poured out its contents on the witness stand. "I saved these for 67 days. Every penny I found, every wrapper that was still good, every bottle cap that Miss Angie touched. I was saving up to buy a mommy." "Why did you want to buy a mommy?" "Because Miss Angie got taken away for trying to help us, and I thought if I had enough money, I could pay someone to love me instead." Amira's voice was clear and strong. "At Greenridge, we get up at 5:30 and clean until dinner time. If we don't finish, we don't eat. If we cry, we go to the quiet room where it's dark and cold, and you can't hear anything except your heart beating real loud." The courtroom was completely silent except for the soft sound of someone crying in the back row. "Miss Angie was the only one who was nice to us. She gave us extra crackers and told us stories and said we were brave and smart and deserving of love. But Mrs. Harrison said Miss Angie was filling our heads with unrealistic expectations." Judge Williams leaned forward. "What do you mean by unrealistic expectations?" "Expecting someone to love us. Expecting to go to school instead of just doing chores. Expecting to be treated like we matter." Amira looked directly at Mrs. Harrison. "But Miss Angie said those weren't unrealistic at all. She said every kid deserves those things." Mrs. Harrison's lawyer tried to object, but Judge Williams silenced him with a look. "Amira, what do you want now?" "I want to stay with Miss Angie. Not because I bought her, but because she chose me back." Amira picked up her sticky lollipop from the pile. "This was for emergencies, but I don't think I need it anymore. Miss Angie taught me that love isn't something you buy, it's something you share. I thought if I saved enough, I could buy someone who loved me again." Amira continued, her voice breaking for the first time. "But Mr. Felix and Miss Raina taught me that I don't have to buy love. Real families choose each other." Judge Williams was quiet for a long moment, studying the papers before her. When she finally spoke, her voice was firm and clear. "Based on the evidence presented and the testimony I've heard today, I'm granting emergency custody of Amira James to Angela Monroe, pending full investigation of Greenridge House." She banged her gavel. "Furthermore, I'm ordering an immediate state investigation into all operations at Greenridge House." The courtroom erupted in cheers. Amira ran into Angela's arms while reporters rushed toward the doors to file their stories. Mrs. Harrison stood abruptly, her face pale with rage, but her lawyers pulled her toward the exit as camera flashes exploded around them. "We did it, baby girl," Angela whispered into Amira's hair. "We did it." "No," Amira said, looking up at her with shining eyes. "We rescued each other." 3 months later, the morning sun streamed through the windows of Felix's corner store, illuminating something new behind the register, a simple wooden frame containing a crumpled brown paper bag. Beneath it, a small brass plaque read, "Sometimes the smallest treasures hold the biggest dreams. Amira James, age 7. The bell chimed as Angela pushed open the door, Amira skipping beside her in a bright yellow dress and matching shoes, both the same shoe this time. Her hair was braided with ribbons, and she carried a fresh paper bag, but this one wasn't for collecting desperate hopes. "Mr. Felix!" Amira called out, racing behind the counter to hug the old man who had become her honorary grandfather. "Look what I brought you!" She opened the new paper bag to reveal an assortment of colorful candies, each one carefully chosen. "These are celebration candies. Miss Angie says every day we're together is worth celebrating." Felix's eyes crinkled as he smiled. "Every day with family is a celebration, little bird." The past 3 months had transformed all of their lives. The state investigation into Greenridge House had uncovered decades of abuse, resulting in criminal charges against Mrs. Harrison and the permanent closure of the facility. The 22 other children had been relocated to proper foster homes or reunited with relatives, their voices finally heard and believed. Angela had officially adopted Amira just 2 weeks ago, in a ceremony where Amira insisted on carrying her original paper bag as her something old. Judge Williams had performed the adoption herself, calling it the most meaningful case of my career. "How's the new job?" Felix asked Angela as she arranged fresh flowers in a vase by the window. "Perfect," Angela said, her face glowing. "Sunrise Daycare actually wants me to nurture children, not discipline them. Imagine that." She had been hired as the head caregiver at a progressive daycare center just 6 blocks from Felix's store. The director, inspired by Amira's story, had specifically sought out Angela for her proven dedication to child welfare. "And Miss Raina is coming for lunch today," Amira announced, organizing her celebration candies by color. "She said she has big news." As if summoned by her name, Raina burst through the door carrying a bottle of sparkling cider and a newspaper. "Have you seen this?" she asked breathlessly, spreading the paper on the counter. The headline read, "Amira's Law passes state legislature new child welfare protections named after 7-year-old hero." "Amira's Law?" the little girl asked, peering at the paper. "It requires surprise inspections of all group homes, mandatory recording devices in common areas, and most importantly, it protects whistleblowers like Miss Angie from retaliation," Raina explained. "Your courage in that courtroom inspired lawmakers to act." Amira studied the newspaper photo of herself on the witness stand, clutching her paper bag. "Do you think other kids will be safer now?" "Much safer," Raina assured her. "And there's more good news. I got promoted to head of child advocacy for the whole region. They want me to train other caseworkers to listen to children the way we listen to you." "That's wonderful," Angela said, pulling Raina into a hug. "You deserve it. We all deserve it," Felix said, gesturing to the framed paper bag. "Amira taught us something important, that sometimes the smallest voices carry the most important messages." A young mother with twin toddlers entered the store, and Amira immediately went to greet them. "Hi. Do you want to see my celebration candy? I pick one for every good thing that happens." The twins giggled as Amira showed them the colorful assortment. "This purple one is for adoption day, this red one is for my first day at real school, and this green one is for when Miss Angie learned to braid my hair with ribbons." "What about this gold one?" one of the twins asked, pointing to a wrapped caramel. "That one's special," Amira said seriously. "That's for the day I learned that families aren't bought with money, they're built with love and choosing each other every single day." The mother smiled at Angela. "You have a very wise daughter. She's taught me more than I've taught her," Angela replied, watching Amira with pure love. As the afternoon wore on, the store filled with their extended family, neighbors who had followed Amira's story, former colleagues of Angela's who had found the courage to speak their own truths, and children from Angela's daycare who adored their Miss Angie. Amira moved among them all like a tiny hostess, sharing her celebration candies and telling anyone who would listen about her paper bag plan that worked, but not the way I thought it would. As the sun began to set, painting the store in golden light, Amira climbed onto Felix's lap while Angela and Raina cleaned up the remnants of their impromptu party. "Mr. Felix," Amira said thoughtfully, "do you remember when I asked if I could buy a mommy? I'll never forget it, little bird. I was silly then. I thought love cost money." She pointed to the framed paper bag. "But I learned something better. Love costs bravery. It costs Miss Angie being brave enough to report bad things. It costs you being brave enough to help a scared kid. It costs Miss Raina being brave enough to fight the system." "And what did it cost you?" Felix asked gently. Amira smiled, the same radiant smile that had melted hearts in a courtroom and changed laws across the state. "It cost me being brave enough to ask for help. And that was the best deal I ever made." Outside, the neon, open, sign flickered in the growing dusk, welcoming anyone who needed a safe place, a listening ear, or simply someone who believed that every person, no matter how small, deserved to be valued, protected, and loved. And in the warm glow of Felix's corner store, a family that had found each other against all odds shared one more celebration candy, grateful for the paper bag plan that had brought them all home. The end.